Welcome to part 13 of this series. We have now gone through the 6 main Earths in the last 2 parts, and now we are restarting and going back to Earths 1 through 3. So the next movie on Earth 1 is going to be Shazam 2. The movie starts with the Shazam kids at a school assembly being taught by a chemist who's talking about a new formula that he's been working on. However, something goes wrong, and the liquid gets all over the scientist, and it starts to change his appearance. Once the chemical takes control of him, he starts to act crazy. The Shazam kids see this happening, and they quickly suit up with their powers. During the fight, the Shazam kids underestimate the Doctor when they try to talk him down at first. They then start to realize that he's getting hotter the angrier that he gets. Billy tells the rest of the kids that they should try and calm him down. However, when they try to talk the Doctor down, they say something wrong. This causes the Doctor to go on a full rampage, and he starts to fight the Shazam family. Billy tells Darla to use her super speed to get all the kids out of school. Darla manages to get all the kids out, but when she gets back, she sees that the room has been engulfed with flames. She sees that the Doctor has escaped, and her siblings are in shock with their defeat. That's when there is a group of first responders and reporters that show up. They try to ask the Shazam kids what happened, and Billy tries to answer that they tried to defuse the situation, but they lost control and the Doctor got away. After that, the kids leave to try and find the Doctor. After a little bit of time of looking for the Doctor, the kids are about to give up when they hear another explosion around the block. They go to check it out. They see a flying person that is in a suit that looks a lot like their own. The Shazam kids realize that he's destroying anyone and anything that gets in his way. The kids try to stop him, but they get easily destroyed. After the defeat, the kids go back to their house and their parents are watching the news. The story is about the fight between the Shazam kids and the person that looked like them. Even though the kids know what really happened, the news portrays the story as the kids as the ones that destroyed that part of the city. The news also used what Billy said about losing their control at the school to make it seem like they're the ones who are destroying the city. The kids quickly start to realize that they are now seen as criminals and must be on the run. They also need to make sure that they keep their secret from their parents. Even though they have gone into hiding, they still try to help anyone they can while they still can. However, there's not a lot they can do without their powers. In the wake of the disappearance of heroes in the city, there have been several people trying to fill in the power void. One of the ways is that people are trying to get into politics. One of these people is Gordon Godfrey. Godfrey runs his own podcast where he talks bad about the superheroes. He uses the podcast and the situation with the Shazam kids to gain more and more popularity for his campaign. With that popularity, Godfrey manages to win the race for mayor. It takes little time for Godfrey to make questionable decisions. One of those decisions is separate the city from the rest of the world. He also separates the city into 8 different districts, each ran by a different villain that was stopped by the Shazam kids. With the city in complete chaos and no other heroes being able to get into the city, the Shazam kids come back into the open to fight Godfrey's society. The kids split up to fight each of the villains, and they all succeed. They then all come together to fight Godfrey. When they get to the mayor's office, they are met with Godfrey and the person that looked like them that destroyed the entire city. This makes the kids realize that it was him that framed them for the destruction of the city, sending the Jekyll and Hyde Doctor to the school. Billy feels something inside of him when he looks at the person that looks like them. Billy looks at Godfrey and asks him how he found the powered person. Godfrey smiles and says, "Wouldn't you like to know, Billy Batson?" Billy is shocked that Godfrey knows who he is. Godfrey explains that he's not just a simple podcaster turned politician. That's when a voice comes on the intercom and says that his real name is Mr. Mind, and he is the last of his civilization that is from the planet Venus. He also explains that he is one of the smartest minds in the multiverse. With his mind, he was able to take over the mind of the real Godfrey. However, he needed time to pull it all off and to make sure that none of the heroes could get in his way. So, once he found out that some of the heroes were children, he knew that they were going to be the easiest ones to frame. Then, when Billy said that stupid thing on the news, Mind wanted to frame them one more time just to rub it in. Then he found out that one of the kids was named Batson. Mr. Mind realized that he had heard that name before because he had already taken over another Batson, Billy's father, Clarence Batson. Now, with the world believing that he is actually Godfrey and the fact that the other heroes can't get into the city, there is nothing that can get in the way of him making his people the most dominant race on Earth. Billy is having a hard time believing that this man is actually his biological father. Billy tries to reason with Clarence to try and reach the love that a father should have for his son. It seems like it is working, however, Mr. Mind tells Godfrey to stop them. The mind-controlled Godfrey shoots Billy. Billy is shocked that the blast hurt him. Mr. Mind says that when he gave Clarence his abilities, he also made a weapon to stop Clarence if he ever broke free and went rogue. Billy's siblings tell him that they must fight. Billy is just frozen with shock and fear. The rest of the Shazam kids realize that they must fight Clarence and Godfrey by themselves. This starts the final fight of the movie. In the fight, the kids get destroyed since they don't have Billy's help. They try to get Billy to help them, but nothing that they say is working. That is, up until Clarence is about to kill one of them, and Billy flashes back to Catwoman and Helena's death in Justice League 3, and he starts to move a little. So another death is on his hands. The kid that is about to be killed sees Billy about to move. They decide to give Billy one last push in the right direction, so they just say Shazam to turn back into their kid form. Once Billy sees the kid inside of the hero, he becomes completely free. Billy quickly takes out Godfrey, then starts to go after his father. Billy manages to defeat his father, just enough to talk with the real man. Clarence tells Billy that there is nothing he can do to save him, that Mr. Mind's mind is way too powerful. Billy doesn't want to believe that, but deep down he does. Billy says that Clarence deserves to be free. Clarence says that there is only one way that he can be free, and that is to run a bolt of lightning through his brain to get Mr. Mind completely out of control over him. Billy says that he doesn't want to, since that would kill him. And even though he already has a father, it would have been nice to have another. Clarence grabs Billy's hands and says that there is no other way, and that if there is one thing that Clarence wants Billy to know about him, is that he loves. Before he can finish the sentence, Mr. Mind starts to get back control of his mind. For whoever that can have it, Billy puts both of his hands on his father's head and reluctantly shooting him with lightning, killing him. The rest of the kids goes to comfort Billy, but all he wants to do is get Mr. Mind. They find Mr. Mind and turning him over to the government, who puts a power dampener around his neck and locks him in a spaceship to send him back to Venus, that leads to everyone to not being mind controlled by him anymore. The movie ends with the funeral of Clarence. We also see the real Godfrey move to Metropolis to continue to work on his podcast. He says that even though a group of heroes saved him from being mind controlled, it doesn't mean he'll start being nice to all the heroes. We also see that some of the people are starting to not trust superpowered beings because of the frame job. The post-credit scene is us going back to ancient Egypt 1,000 years ago and seeing that the wizard that gave Billy's power give those powers to an Egyptian slave named Black Adam. The next movie of this part is a Wildcat movie that takes place on Earth 2. The movie starts with Wildcat arriving on Earth 2 after he was shot by Lex Luthor's gun after Justice League 3. He tries to figure out where he is and how he got there. He starts to walk around to then find a newspaper stand. He thinks that it is weird that one of those stands are still around in the 21st century. He picks up a newspaper to see that he has somehow made it to the city in New York called Battery Park. He wonders how he got there, but then he looks at a date to see that it says that it is the year 1939. He doesn't believe his eyes, and he starts to see all of the 30s things that he was missing earlier. I'm talking about only the rich having vehicles and everyone being in old baggy clothes. He needs to figure out how he went back in time, so he goes to the library to find the newspaper archives. When he gets there, he starts to look for anything that from his past that made everything look like 1939. He also starts to look for Oliver and Laurel. He doesn't find anything about them, but he does find something about a vigilante called Black Canary, and he once gave Laurel a canary necklace, so he tries to go and find her. Later that night, he finds a group of criminals, and he sees one of them taking them all out by posing as a member of the group. Ted sits back and waits for her to get finished. Once she gets finished, Ted follows her. She senses that he is following her and quickly turns around to attack him. Ted tries to defend himself, but she easily defeats him. He says that she needs to stop because he just wants to talk to her. Laurel Canary stops and asks him where he heard that name. Ted gets confused and says that he thought that was her name. She says no, her name is Dana Drake, but she always wanted to name her kid Laurel Lance. Before Ted could respond, he is hit on the back of the head, knocking him out. Ted wakes up in an interrogation room at a police station with a bright light glaring at his face from a lamp. He realizes that the Black Canary is staring back at him, with the police detective standing behind him. They start questioning him about how they know the name Laurel. Ted says that he doesn't fully understand how he got there, but the only thing that he has figured out is that he is from the future, and that's how he knows Laurel. Because they will someday have a kid or grandkid that is named Laurel. He explains to them that the last thing that he remembers is that a madman named Lex Luthor shot him with a gun, and he then woke up there. So his guess is that something inside that gun made him go back in time. Dinah doesn't believe him. That is up until Ted mentions that the detective standing behind him has to be named Larry Lance, and that he is the grandfather of Laurel. This fully convinces Larry. However, it only raises suspicions in Dinah. Larry pulls Dinah aside and persuades her that he is actually from the future. They can use any information that he might have. Dinah agrees on one condition, that Ted helps him take down a smaller operation so she can trust him. After that is done, Ted is free to do whatever he wants as long as he gives them further information about the future. Ted agrees. Larry and Dinah tells Ted about an illegal underground fighting league that has killed so many people, and it has led to the death of almost every undercover officer that they've sent there. Larry says that they'll understand if Ted doesn't want to go through with it, but if he doesn't, then they won't be allowed to help him create a new life for him in this new time period. Ted says that he will take the risk, not for their help, but because that's what a hero and a good person should do. He then goes to the address that they gave him. He manages to get inside by using the password that Dinah and Larry had managed to have for over the years. He gets led to the person in charge of the fighting so he can get scheduled for a fight. The person that is leading Ted into the room whispers something to the person in charge, and the person gives a smile on their face. The person introduces herself as Roulette. She says that they have been holding fights for years, and they have had a strong system of running things that has allowed them to stay away from the police. He then gets led to a waiting room to wait for the fight. When he leaves, Roulette says that there isn't a way that Ted will survive his fight. In his room, he is getting ready for the fight when he is visited by someone. Ted asks who they are, but they don't answer him. The only thing they say is that this place is not what it seems, that Ted needs to get out of there. As soon as he gets done talking, Ted can see that a switch goes off in the guy's mind. Then the guy happily and weirdly says that he wishes that Ted has a good day. That's when a man comes inside the room to take Ted to his fight. The man tells the weird person that they need to leave Ted alone. The person quickly leaves the room without saying anything. This is when Ted sees that the man has a controller in his hand, and the weird person has a device on the back of his neck. This raises suspicions in Ted. Ted then gets to his fight, and he quickly realizes that he's surrounded by people who seem to look like supervillains, and they are betting on the fights that are going on in front of them. Ted enters the ring and looks across to see his first opponent. He then hears an announcer say that the next fight is scheduled to be the newcomer named Wildcat, and he will be fighting the returning Shining Knight. During the fight, he tries to talk to the Shining Knight to try and figure out what's happening. However, Ted quickly starts to realize that the Knight has the same device on his neck that the person before had on his neck, and that the device is making him not only try to win the fight, but also try and kill Ted. After a little bit of time trying to not be killed, Ted manages to knock out the Knight. Ted tries to get to the device, but someone with a huge fist hits him. That's when he hears Roulette's voice that says that she uses the password that Ted gave them to trap people who are secretly working for the police. So she is going to force Ted to keep fighting other heroes over and over again that is under her control until he is unable to move, and that his first opponent will be the Atom Smasher. Ted tries to survive his fight with Atom Smasher, but he is too tired and weak from his fight with the Shining Knight that he quickly loses and he passes out from the pain. He then wakes up in a hospital room. He looks around and sees that Dinah, Larry, and the person that approached him in his room is sitting at his bedside. He asks them how they got him out. They explain that the person that was in his room was one of the people that Dinah and Larry sent in to take out Roulette, and his name is Lee Travis, aka the Crimson Avenger. He says that he manages to stay away from Roulette's control, that Ted was the first person that was working with Dinah and Larry that he could recognize and get to in time to save him. So Travis got Ted out before Roulette can get a hold of his mind. Dinah tells Ted that once he gets better and out of the hospital, he and Travis can start working together to finally take down Roulette. Ted refuses and says that he is done and that he will find a way to build a life for himself on his own in this new time period. Dinah gets upset with Ted, but Larry talks her down, and all three of them leave where anything harmful is said. When Ted gets out of the hospital, he starts to look for a building to live in and to build a gym to train fighters in. He looks at a new building that he found when he then looks across the street. He sees a kid reading a book when a speeding car starts to come towards him. Ted races towards the kid, and he gets him out of the way of the car. The kid thanks him, and then Ted tells him that he should be more careful. Ted then looks at the book, and he realizes that the book that the kid is reading is about a superhero. Ted asks the kid what the book was about. The kid says it is about the Green Lantern, whose name is Alan Scott. Ted tells the kid that he has met a Green Lantern before. The kid gets excited and says that the Green Lantern is the greatest hero and that he will never turn his back on Earth. This conversation gets inside of Ted's mind so much that it convinces him to become Wildcat and take down Roulette. This starts the final fight of the movie, where he manages to fight all the villains that he's paying for the Underground Fight Club. Plus, he is fighting all the mind-controlled heroes, trying to free them. Halfway through the fight, he finds Travis and helps him take down the Atom Smasher. Travis says that he appreciates Ted's help and that he is happy that Ted decided that he could become Wildcat again. Ted says that someone helped him realize that a true hero would not turn his back on the world, even if it's not their own. Ted and Travis continues on and takes down all the villains and frees all the heroes. Ted gets to the final cell and he opens the door. He is surprised to see that it is Oliver Queen and Roy Harper. Ted goes to greet them, but they don't know who he is. They tell Ted that they have never met him before. When asked how they got to this time period, they said that they don't understand because they have always lived in the 1930s. This makes Ted realize that Lex didn't just send him to the past, but he also sent him to another Earth. With all of the villains defeated, the heroes surround Roulette, calling her to surrender, allowing Larry and Dinah to arrest her. The movie ends with Ted happily running his new gym when he is approached by Dinah and Larry. They said that they had scheduled an appointment for Ted to see Dr. Midnighter to see if they could figure out how Ted got to this world. They then asked Ted if he knows anything coming up for the United States in the future. Ted asked him if the United States of this era has any kind of Pearl Harbor. The movie would have 3 post-credit scenes in it. The first would be the Shining Knight meeting with Atom Smasher, Oliver, and Roy to talk about becoming heroes again. The second would be Ted sitting in Dr. Midnighter's office, and the doctor concludes by looking at Ted's genetics that he is from another Earth. Then something goes wrong that causes an explosion in the lab that the doctor is in. The final post-credit scene is Larry walking in an alleyway when he gets seriously hurt with a hockey puck that hits him right on the skull. The final movie of this part will take place on Earth 3 and will be a Lex Luthor movie. I don't want this to be a traditional superhero movie with a traditional setup with a hero fighting against a villain. Kind of like how the Joker movie was. So with that being said, the movie starts with Lex being born. During the birth, Lex's mother dies. It is also revealed that Lex has the starting signs of the disease that has killed every male Luthor before him. This causes Lex's father, Lionel, to send Lex away and to neglect Lex. After keeping Lex locked away from the rest of the world, at the age of 8, Lex sends Lex away to a boarding school. Lionel tells Lex that the reason that he is going to the boarding school is that he needs to focus more on the company that he's trying to start. However, Lex believes that it is because Lionel is tired of taking care of him. It is at the boarding school where Lex meets Jonathan Kent. The two of them become the best of friends. Jonathan tells Lex that he has met a girl named Martha and he is starting to date her. This confuses Lex because the rule at the all-boy boarding school is that none of the boys are allowed to be in any sort of relationship. When asked about it, Jonathan tells Lex that he shouldn't worry about it as long as they don't get caught. This causes Lex to go down a downward spiral in his life since him and Jonathan are starting to break all the rules. This is up until they are about to get caught breaking a rule by the school. When they do finally get caught, Jonathan snitches on Lex, saying that it was all his idea. This causes Lex to be kicked out of the school. Later that night, Lex confronts Jonathan about what happened and asks him why he did it. Jonathan tells him that he is sorry, but he had to do it because his parents would kill him if he was kicked out of the school. Besides, Lex doesn't have to worry about that since his father doesn't care about him. Lex then punches Jonathan in the face, knocking Jonathan to the ground. Lex then takes out a knife and stabs Jonathan in the spine, paralyzing him for the rest of his life. When Jonathan wakes up in the hospital bed, Lex tries to convince him to not tell the cops, but as soon as Lex leaves the room, Jonathan's parents tells the police everything. This causes Lex to be arrested. Jonathan visits Lex in the jail, and he tries to tell Lex that it was actually his parents that told the police. However, Lex doesn't show up to the visit because he doesn't want to talk to Jonathan. In the prison, Lex becomes the king of the prison. Anything that his fellow prisoners want to do has to go through him. This causes the women to be with him at all times, so he's sleeping with a different woman every night. That is, up until Lex is released on parole. Lex doesn't know who released him until he sees a black limo sitting at the front of the prison. The limo then takes him to Lionel Corp, the business that Lex's father created. The limo driver takes Lex to see his father. When Lex sees Lionel, it is obvious that Lionel also has a disease, and it has started to kill him. Lionel tells him that he has always loved Lex. He was just never good at showing him. That is, up until he tells Lex that he has in his will that Lex will get everything that Lionel owns. This makes Lex angry because he didn't care about anything that his father had. So he asked his father why he thought he had the right to take him out of his kingdom at the prison. So because Lionel did this, he will then take him out of his kingdom before the disease is able to. Lex then walks over to the life support that is keeping his father alive, and he turns the life support off. He then tells the limo driver that the disease killed Lionel and that they need to call 911. Then an emergency news story comes on the TV stating that a meteor has crashed into the prison that was holding Lex. Lex then gets a phone call from the people in charge of the prison that before the meteor hit, they were able to get all the kids out that was born by the female prisoners, and that one of the kids belonged to him. However, they were unable to save the child's mother. Lex thinks for a moment and says that he will happily take the child. The movie ends with Lex saying that Lionel Corp will now be called Lex Corp. Lex says that the death of his father opened up his eyes and that it has caused him to change his life for the better as both a businessman and a follower of his own Alexander Luthor Jr. The post-credit scene is Lex receiving a phone call from Johnson saying that the meteor that crashed into the prison has caused a miracle for him and Martha's life. That is because in the meteor was a child that they will legally adopt, and they will name the child Clark. With this news, Lex quickly crushes his phone into pieces. Thank you for watching part 13 of this series. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry for taking so long, but please, if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe.